Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
Oh, this week we're starting a new festival, our stand-up comedy festival. We're going to start out with 2013 film, Sleepwalk With Me.
Let's dive on in. All right, everybody, I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palter.
And if you like what you see /hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what?
Find good media. That's right. Our most popular platforms are obviously YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Those are our most active channels, so please join us.
Yep. So we are starting a new festival. It is a stand-up comedy festival.
I'm very excited about this.
I am too. I think that we're both fans of
Massive.
a lot of stand-up comedy, and I think that, you know, it is an interesting topic thinking about sort of the different ways that comedians approach their craft. I think that you have some people who, you know, you went and saw Mark Maron last night, and
he's in this movie.
He's in this movie. He very much is one of these people that looks at, like, you know, your autobiographical aspects can really be charged into your work and make it into something really vicarious that you can go through things with. And you have people like Seinfeld, they're like, nah, it's all bullshit. Like, you don't have to do that. You just have to have a good craft, make good jokes, and just be linear with it and don't worry about it. And I think that we're going to find with this festival people who are landing on some different sides of that. Now,
I think we also will find that all of these people are damaged in some way.
That is true.
I think you kind of have to be, just like any other tortured artist or whatever, right? You have to, especially, you know, stand-up is such a naked thing, right? And I think he even says in the movie, he's like, you kind of have to be delusional a little bit. Which is true for a lot of jobs, especially in front of people you think of, actors or athletes. You have to have this fake confidence about yourself to know you can perform in that way. And, you know, especially someone like Mike, who really started telling stories about his life more, and that's when he became a good comic. When you're standing up there, it's very naked, very vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing certain stories, you know, you get like a Mitch Hedberg or something that's different, you know, it's jokes, or Seinfeld or whatever, like you're saying. So all of them approach things in a way, but I feel, you know, Seinfeld maybe be the opposite, but I feel like you kind of have to have a dark place in you to go up there and do that, because you have to be that vulnerable in your daily life too, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting take. And I also think that, you know, it's worth noting that I believe this is the only movie in the festival that is, I mean, he's playing a slightly different character, but this isn't an actor. This is Mike Birbiglia telling the story of sort of his own life. I mean,
basically him.
It's basically him. The name is slightly different. Everything that happens is what happened to him in his life that really made up his one-man show, Sleepwalk With Me. And I think that it is interesting to think about that idea of delusional aspects, or I would say even like when you watch, and maybe I'm just thinking of it because we were just talking about him a couple weeks ago, but when you watch Philip Seymour Hoffman in Boogie Nights, he's good, but he's not Before the Devil Knows You're Dead good.
Yeah.
So you kind of almost have to start and be like, I need to get into this and do this, even though I haven't honed my craft yet. The only way I'm going to hone my craft is literally by doing the thing, and that has to be in front of people, right? And so I think that's a really interesting aspect that we see here. And even though Mike Birbiglia is not an actor per se, he does a really great job of being a bad version of himself as a comic.
Interesting, yeah.
You know, like he does, because he's not horrible, he's just boring. He thinks he understands what jokes are, and they're not yet.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. No, absolutely. I'm sure every comic goes through some version of this. Rarely are you just knock it out of the park every show.
Yeah, right, out of the gates.
Just like anything, same with actors and athletes, you have to fail to get better, right? Like you have to go up there and hone your craft and do all that stuff. And honestly, like, it took me a little while to fully enjoy Mike's like delivery and tone and kind of what he was going for. But I do think he's a really good storyteller, and he does focus on really funny aspects of like his brain or the things around him, and he is good. I've grown to really like him a lot, and this is a fun movie. I actually saw it at Sundance And in retrospect, it was a way cooler experience because Ira Glass was really the only one I knew that was attached to this. When I saw this, I knew Mike was a comedian and stuff, but I never had really watched his stuff, and then I didn't really know who Mark Maron was. Maybe Kristen Shaw a little bit,
right?
But like she's in this a little bit too. But like for the most part, like I was there for Ira Glass, but in retrospect, having all those people there and seeing this movie, it was a cool experience to kind of be there when it came out, and I don't know, it's just a moment I remember, and yeah.
Well, let's talk about that really quick because that was really one of my largest takeaways from this. I guess just for a quick premise, this is both about Mike Birbiglia's journey as a comedian, learning how to become a better comedian along the way. Part of this is kind of a road trip movie.
I'd say it's just kind of like a fun, cute rom-com, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it is in a lot of ways. Although it is also about him dealing with this very particular disorder.
Yeah, very interesting.
That's come on because of stress in his life, and it's really about the way in which we way too often ignore these stressors that are actually the most important thing that's happening in our life, and instead do everything but that thing, which is go to the sleep study, go to a doctor, go and talk to somebody until it's so big that you can't ignore it anymore. And it's a very human aspect. This is a deeply, deeply Ira Glass project. Not just because he was the executive producer, not just because he
wrote it too.
Yeah, he co-wrote it with Birbiglia, based upon his one-man show. But I think it's like Ira always said with This American Life that the story is never enough. Like having a good story, it can't just be about that. It has to be about something larger than itself. And if it wasn't,
something people relate to.
And if it wasn't, it would get cut from This American Life, right? People would always come up with great stories in pitch meetings, and he would really frustrate people because as the producer, he'd be like, but what's it about, right? And so it needs to uncover some deeper, richer truth about the human condition. And it's funny because this movie's a decade old, and these days, that idea of it being about something bigger and uncovering that something bigger is totally taken for granted. And I hadn't really thought about this till I was watching this, and I was like, but that, like, This American Life put that stamp on our zeitgeist about what telling stories means, right?
Sure.
In a post Louis C.K., Tig Notaro, and Mark Maron landscape, we want a joke to have and that's when it occurred to me, hook in it, right? If it doesn't have that, it's fine, but it doesn't gut punch you the way that it has since that has become so important in the comedy landscape, in the public storytelling landscape, right? In whether that's like storytelling, podcasting, anything like that. Like we need everything to have this deeper through line context of, something that evolves it to this new level about a deeper human truth. And I just think that it's really interesting that like there is a time sort of before the mid to late 2000s when This American Life really kind of took over what storytelling meant.
No, yeah, you're right.
That we didn't used to do that. A story could just be a story. It didn't need to have an aha moment.
I mean, it's always better when it does.
I 100% agree.
So I understand where he's coming from. Like, I mean, if it doesn't do that, then what are we doing this for? You want to attach yourself. You want to relate to something, right? You want to, even if it's about, I'm thinking of a famous This American Life episode where all these Santa Clauses like have this union and are fighting and all this shit.
That's right.
And it's just like, why are we talking about this? But it's just like there's something relatable inside of that story that everyone can grasp onto, whether or piques your curiosity too. Well, like you have to do that as well.
That's exactly it. And gives you a universal thread that you can grab onto and feel like, this somehow has to do with me.
Where's the thread? That's what he's asking.
But here's the thing, like I remember, when I got my job, capital J job in podcasting, it was 2009. And I remember having to sort of pitch that idea to the people that were going to hire me. That I was like, they were like, well, why will other than, because
your mom.
Well, not even that. I mean, with these particular stories that I was going to help produce, like the kids are incarcerated, right? And so it was like, why would anybody else who maybe hasn't had that lifestyle listen to that? And I had to talk about this idea of a universal truth, like uncovering this like deeper thing. And like, I talked about Hourglass and I talked about all these things, and they were less ubiquitous back then than they are now, where because everybody and their mom has a podcast now, and everybody knows that that universal truth, you know, kind of switch will, you know, we'll tie it in there, and that's what'll make the whole thing work, is a given these days with any kind of even remotely halfway decent radio, or storytelling or podcasting or whatever it might be. But it's just funny to think about that before that was not the case. And that's sort of when this movie kind of came out, it was like, look, right? And
It's true.
yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting concept anyway.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here. Movies.
Totally.
It's storytelling.
Yep.
That's what we want. And everyone has a story, and you have to find the ones that are the most entertaining. What do you think of the breaking the fourth wall here throughout the movie?
I think first of all, it reminds me so much of High Fidelity.
Oh yeah, I got that.
I mean, that is definitely there. Now, having seen his one man, not in person, but I've seen the stage production of his one man show, and it's exactly like that. I mean, I don't think he's sitting in a car, but he comes out and talks directly to you, right?
Yeah.
And that does have one of the best punchlines, which I remember because I was always a really big fan of Birbiglia. He used the punchline in a different bit before he did his one man show, and then he reused it here, but it's great in both regards, which is when he goes, I know. I'm with you in the future. Like, it's one of the best lines in the whole thing.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is the best line. I'm also a huge Lauren Ambrose fan. I wish she was in more stuff. She's so good. But Abby, his girlfriend, fiance, throughout this kind of rom-com. Yeah, no, I don't know. And then we kind of hint at the sleepwalking at first, you know. It's a great title for a movie, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, and you don't know how real it is, and then you kind of see him in his apartment, and he's doing weird shit.
I love those reveals. I love that the dream sequences aren't Lynchian or weird. They just seem totally normal, and everything seems normal. I mean, one of them...
Dustbustering, right?
Yeah, he wins an award for dustbustering. Later, you know, they do a great... bait and switch where you think that he is cheating on his girlfriend, and it turns out to be another dream. But I thought that was a great one because, again, there's no fog machines, there's no weird lighting.
Yeah.
It looks totally normal, and they start kissing, and you're like, oh, damn, dude, don't cheat on your girlfriend. And then she gives him the pizza pillow around his neck, and he's like, oh, great. And you're like, oh, it's a dream. And I like that it's not, none of it is ever like, I mean, the most obvious one is when he's with the military and they're like, you know, the bomb or the missiles are right at you. But everything before that feels natural enough that someone just says something weird to him, and then we switch to see what the dream actually where he's sleepwalking. Yeah. It's done really naturally, and I thought it was I never got tired of the way they used it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. You know, we get into this relationship of theirs, right? They're, you know, he obviously has some kind of commitment issues. They've been together 8 years or something, which is a long time to be with somebody.
Yeah.
You know, the parents are great here too. Carol Kane and what is the dad?
He's the guy from The Game. He's the one who
I always think of The Game as well.
I know.
James Reborn.
Yeah, James Reborn. He's great.
But you know, kind of getting their history a little bit, their past. He says her teeth were bigger than her head, but in a sexy way.
I know.
There's some great lines in here.
Well, and this is the kind of stuff that I think, again, makes what Birbiglia is doing in the early parts of this movie, where he's bad on stage, but funny in his life.
Yes.
Not overwhelmingly funny, but really deeply charming, honestly funny. And you're like, oh, he doesn't know why he might be a good comedian, right? Because, the teeth bigger than her head, but in a sexy way is just such a good line.
Comparing him and their relationship sexually as he's Molly Ringwald and she's Devin.
She's Devin.
The whole thing. Like, that's really funny. And, you know, you start seeing him he works at a bar at a stand-up place. He gets 5 minutes, and he's starting to get better. He gets an agent, but
he's getting paid like $150 to drive for like 7 hours up to upstate.
Yeah, and he's got this kind of this agent who has a cigarette ash like 3 inches long, and but you said your favorite line. There's tons of good lines in this, and he's a very clever guy and has some. His brain, I like how his brain works.
Yeah.
You said the best line was I know I'm in the
future with you.
Yeah, that one is really good. But my favorite is love is a mountain of pizza flavored ice cream and illusion.
Oh yes, I love that. We could eat pizza flavored ice cream whenever we wanted. Yeah, that stuff is so good.
So tons of good lines like that.
But I think that it is interesting that it's like, again, both with a movie like High Fidelity and then, the other one that we talked about recently when we were talking about High Fidelity, which was Chef, these movies about these like middle-aged guys kind of stuck in turnaround, paddling in the shallow end of the pool with these very successful women who are trying to drag them back into the deep end of the pool, and they have things that they want to do in their life, but they're stunted by their own it's not even lack of ambition. It's almost like it's lack of clarity for the thing they want. They want a thing
he
really.
He doesn't know what he wants.
Yeah. He wants something really badly, but he doesn't even have a way to articulate why he wants it.
Absolutely.
Right?
No. Yeah, no. I mean, his whole conversation with his sister about a breakup, I'm like, dude, that's the last thing you need to do right now. Like, you need to suggest a breakup or just a break.
A break. Yeah. He's like, how about a non-sex break? Like, we don't have sex with other people. We just take a break. Yeah. And you're like, that's the last thing you need. No, what's interesting, and I'm skipping around a little bit, but, it does take and I wish there was a better way to say this because I know how loaded it is to even reference this guy these days, but it does have a very Woody Allen-esque third act where really quickly he acknowledges at a point like, oh yeah, years later, I went to visit Abby with her husband and her kids. Yeah. And you're like, whoa, like I didn't see that.
No, I could absolutely see Woody Allen, especially because he talks to the camera too all the time.
But part of it is this like purposeful anticlimax. Like what would have happened in a different film, what would have happened in probably a non-Ira Glass produced film is she would go with her parents and be like, oh, he's doing really good. Let's go see one of his acts. And they'd go there and see him doing the stand-up about how he doesn't want to get married and should run out crying. And the parents would be really mad. And they'd go have this big heart-to-heart in the middle of the street and it'd be raining. And then they'd make up and that'd be the happy ending. Yep. None of that shit happens here. Mm-hmm. Right? Like all
That's
of
High Fidelity, actually.
Totally. But all of those elements of, because it's a thing, I feel like it's a red herring you're worried about through a lot of this movies. He does start to talk about his personal life and starts to get success. And you're waiting for her to see him do that and get her heart broken.
Yeah.
It never happens.
Yeah, that's true. That's a payoff I was like surprised they didn't go to.
Same here, because you're like, well, of course that's the setup, but it's like, no, it's not. And that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, and he's going on these tours. He's opening up for Mark, and Mark basically tells him like, hey, I don't know if his name is Mark in the movie, but basically be yourself, be honest.
Yeah, you should put that in your act. That's funny.
Exactly. Yeah. Just do that. Keep doing that stuff. And so, yeah, you would think someone that was so hyped at the beginning of the movie to see his stand-up career, he goes up and does a dry 5 minutes of like bad. What is the joke that he goes to?
The Cookie Monster has an eating disorder.
Yeah, that one.
You're like, oh my god, and you're like, there probably is a funny punchline in that.
Yeah, there's
somewhere.
There's something
in there, but he doesn't know what it is.
But she was like, couldn't help herself. Said, "You did so good," all this stuff. And maybe it's because they start drifting apart or something because he is gone or whatever. But yeah, I agree. That is a moment that they definitely should have had in the movie. Like, that's something as an audience member, I'm very curious about. Like,
yeah, you're like the blueprint's there. Like,
this?
Yeah, like why would you not have the conflict take place? But
maybe
I think
it's not about that. I don't know.
And I think that it's not. And I think that maybe that's the red herring that Birbiglia and Glass wanted, right? Is to be like, we're not going to do that because that's not what happened. What happened instead is I had a dream that there were missiles pointed, Al Qaeda missiles pointed directly at my room in the La Quinta Inn. And so I had to jump out the window, right? And that's what the movie's actually about, is that like, if you ignore the thing you're actually supposed to do. And maybe this is part of it too, is like, you know, he's supposed to see a sleep specialist, but maybe he's also supposed to marry his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And in one case, he jumps out the window and has to go to the emergency room. And in the other case, she leaves him.
Yeah.
And only one of them do we actually focus in on, because it's the only one that he can probably talk about with any semblance of reality, I guess.
Absolutely. No, yeah. The whole jumping out of the fucking window is wild. And that the fact that it really happened, and he walks up to the fucking, he has to go to the front desk. Oh, like that. Like,
like my key's still in my room.
Yeah. Like, he does start get a little bit of fame, right? He starts becoming I wouldn't say he's like some huge comedian by any means, but he's out on the road. He's starting to get better. He's getting
people
better.
Actually like him.
And yeah, girls start showing interest on the road and stuff like that. So he's tempted, and there's stuff like that. And so you kind of go through this with him, and it's really interesting. Honestly, Woody Allen is a really good comparison to a lot of what you're saying.
Well, again, to a comment you always make, like the stakes aren't that high.
Yeah.
Like the stakes here are, he's not an overwhelmingly shitty boyfriend. He's just a super lukewarm boyfriend. He's a super non-committed boyfriend who wants. It's funny because on one hand,
sister's wedding. Oh man.
Oh, I know.
It's the worst.
Well, because like on one hand, he doesn't want anything to change.
Yeah, he's too scared.
But it's really interesting because it's like on one hand, he doesn't want anything to change, but on the other hand, he's also the one who starts pulling on this thread of like going on these little road trips and like being out there and doing all this stuff. So it's almost like and again, it's this, you know, it's the man-child thing where it's like he's the one that's affecting burning his relationship to the ground, but he's acting as if that's not what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's very like...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen the man-child movie before.
many times.
Yes.
Many times.
So, it's crazy that the disorder that he has with the REM sleep and everything, that you can actually kill someone sleepwalking.
And not know it.
Yeah, and have no idea. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's so... I mean, he gets... I feel like he gets more in depth with it in his one-man show than he does here.
Yeah, I think, there's only so much Ira's going to let in.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Before it gets too off the rails.
Yeah, totally. But it is really interesting, I think, that aspect of, like, you are not manifesting your stress. I mean, my God, dude, I do this.
Sure.
You're not manifesting your stress in the normal ways.
The right way.
You're manifesting it in these, you know, like physiological ways. And then you're trying to play it off as if that's not a thing that's super important to what's happening, right? That you're like, well, it's fine. Yeah, I took a shower with all my clothes on and didn't realize I had done any of it, but that's okay. You know, it's like, no, it's probably not. It's probably not okay at all.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Good movie though. It's fun rewatch.
Yeah, definitely.
I honestly don't think I've seen it since Sundance, so it was fun to rewatch. He is a super funny guy. Yeah. Charming guy, weird guy for sure.
Yeah.
Again, yeah. Since you said Woody Allen, I can't stop thinking.
There's a lot of that.
I can see that. He kind of went on to not really do more. I think he probably directed one of his specials.
Yeah, I think so.
And a couple episodes of like some TV.
A comedian.
But yeah, he's mostly just a comedian. So kind of interesting that he chose to direct it too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but it's his baby. I get it. You know, you kind of have to, you know what it should be, right?
Yeah, it's your one-man show.
Anyways, thank you very much for watching. We're going to continue our stand-up festival. I guess we have that one scene next week. We're going to do the Jurassic Park scene with the T-Rex reveal.
Yes.
Very excited to rewatch that and talk about it. But our next film on the docket is King of Comedy.
That's right.
All right, excellent. Let's do that. Dive into that and get some Scorsese. We're going dark.
I know, very dark.
Excited to do that, but please join us. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are our most active channels, so please join us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, you guys.